So that means for 99.99% of our existence, for millions of years, we mainly ate meat. And then in the last
Yeah.
just 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, which is just 0.001% of our existence, we started eating other foods like grains, beans, and dairy.
Change is not easy.
Say you're struggling with discipline, you're struggling with sugar addiction, and you constantly get stressed, and the first thing the first thought you have is, I'm gonna reach for a cookie. If you do a visualization of you in that moment of feeling resistance and then not reaching for the cookie, so you're visualizing yourself being stressed out to the max and yet still not reaching for the cookie. I termed this a training visualization. I actually gave them names in my guide, the Monster Mindset Guide. The training visualization trains your brain to believe that you are so disciplined, because that's the beautiful part about it. Your brain cannot differentiate between a real scenario that actually happened and a visualized scenario.
One of the biggest thing that I have biggest benefit of this mechanism is skin healing that I've seen. So I've used microneedling to cause micro damage, basically this controlled damage to my own skin, and I repaired my acne scars with that. So my skin grew back.
Wow. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. It is my pleasure today to be chatting with my soul sister, Inka Land. We have so much in common, and I am so happy that we get to share your story with my audience. So, hi, thank you for accepting my invite. And can you tell us a little bit about your story? Because from what I've gathered so far, I think it can be very helpful to a lot of people.
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm always happy to chat with you. And so technically my background, my educational background, let's start from there, is in neuropsychology. So I did a double thesis. I have done research, master's, and clinical internship. And I have basically worked with neurorehabilitation and neuropsychological assessment. And I did my bachelor's of science in psychology and sports science, sport physiology, and I'm doing my postgrad diploma in nutrition and disease. And I'm a speaker and health author, and I have a YouTube channel and Instagram education. And I guess my story kind of intertwines well with my education and content. It was quite of a big reason why I think directed into that route of neuropsychology. So I was growing up with chronic pain, chronic migraines, chronic cluster headaches, just pretty much diagnosed with every autoimmune disorder that you can think of. Like I've been suspected to have fibromyalgia, psoriasis, IBS, Sjogren's syndrome. I have had acne, like very weird inflammatory symptoms. And I was dealing with these all my life, essentially. And then I started using different kind of lifestyle strategies to overcome these. And now I'm here in remission, and I'm so happy that I am. And I'm just trying to share and educate as much as possible as I can about brain health and mental health, because these are linked and these are so fundamentally important for healing.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So what would you say is the biggest change or biggest changes you've made that have put all of these conditions in remission?
Yeah, I think metabolic strategies is the number one thing. And I encountered this over and over and over again in different contexts, not only in my clients or with the people that I've helped, but also when I listen to other people in this field. So Christopher Palmer just recently wrote the book Brain Energy, talking about how metabolic strategies can help with different kind of neuropsychiatric disorders, mental health disorders. There is like in Alzheimer's research, there is metabolic strategies that can help. Of course, as you know, you work with people, help them with carnivore diet, meat-based diet, and these strategies help with addiction, help with I bet you have also noticed a lot of like physical illness, like inflammatory symptoms. So that would be probably the number one biggest. And then there are exercise, I think, comes as a good second, but that's also metabolism. It's so much about the muscle-brain connection is actually how your brain metabolizes things. And it's also brain training quite a lot. And
Oh,
stress reduction and mindset for sure.
mindset. Very,
Mm.
very interesting. Okay, so um, m- so when you say metabolic strategies and stress reduction, are we also talking, so if it's mainly mindset, are we also talking like metabolic changes in terms of diet as well?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm referring to. So
Okay.
dietary, nutritional strategies that can
Okay.
help. So one big thing that I think has really helped is in terms of nutrition is to understand just like how blood sugar
Mm-hmm.
works and how ketones work. And
Yeah.
then try to increase your body's production of ketones, which is the other fuel that the body and especially the brain uses for
Yeah.
energy metabolism. And that's, I'm sure you have talked a lot about that in your channel, but because that's such a pure form of energy for the brain, it can be very beneficial, especially if you have some sort of neurological or mental health related symptom.
So how would you describe, generally speaking, your diet right now? I've seen some stories on your Instagram, but in general, how would you describe it?
So I have very low carb diet. I eat a lot of MCTs. I actually eat just pure MCT oil, so that's or C8 oil. So those are exogenous ketones that you can get. And I find that even without ketogenic diet,
Yeah.
just getting exogenous ketones can cause a nice elevation in your ketone level
Okay.
and really help with satiety and thinking and just general lowering of inflammation because it's also boosting brain levels of NAD. And many people are trying to boost the NAD these days because we know that that's such an important energy molecule in the brain, and it also counteracts oxidative stress and aging in the brain. So just ramping up ketones actually ramps up NAD as well. And so my diet is pretty much based on keeping staying away from sugar. That's important. Staying away from dairy or anything inflammatory. I eat
Even butter.
mostly, yeah, I would love to eat butter, but I do react to it.
Huh.
So I have tried ghee even, and that just doesn't fit to my body. So I cannot eat that. I eat a lot of meat, and I still eat like things like broccoli, iceberg lettuce. Those are the main greens that I have in my diet. And I do drink coffee. I drink a lot of water, electrolytes, but I eat all types of meat. Mostly I eat chicken, trout or
Okay.
fatty fish, and then I eat beef, low-fat beef.
Okay. So you mentioned broccoli, and then when I hear IBS
Yeah.
and broccoli, like right away I'm thinking it doesn't cause any issues with that.
So I don't have the IBS symptoms anymore.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, but if I were to eat grains or legumes or
Yes.
beans, I would get symptoms. I eat broccoli maybe once every 3 days.
Okay.
So it's not stable for me.
It's not in like in large quantities.
No, absolutely not. It's just a side dish.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
It's mostly for the taste as well. Like I pure meat, for example, just I tried the lion and I must say that it was just maybe I'll do it if I get like a super flare up of symptoms,
Yeah.
but I don't need to do it at the moment because I'm not getting flare-ups from broccoli, for example, and
Yeah.
I need a little bit of variety, or I want it at this point.
Yes.
I would be willing to do like a pure lion. Dieting has never been very difficult for me or changing diet, but at the moment I like the variety.
And How did you discover that you were reacting to butter?
It's been all my life. I don't know, since I was a child, I've been reacting to milk products, all of them, especially processed milk.
Mm,
And then I quit milk for 10 years completely.
yeah.
And then I started trying again, and it just never fitted. So I'm getting acne immediately when I eat milk, and I'm getting joint pain immediately when I eat milk. So I don't get like a GI symptoms from that, but I get inflammation.
That is a very interesting.
Yeah, and I was able to drink a little bit of raw milk actually, so I can tolerate that, but I'm
Right,
not drinking it daily necessarily.
right. And is it easy to get? You're in Estonia, right? And
Yeah,
and how easy is it to get raw milk from there?
very easy. Yeah, I can buy it from any supermarket.
Nice. Yeah, here we have to jump through loops because it's, you can't sell unpasteurized dairy or milk very easily.
Yeah, I've understood. That's such a shame though,
Yeah.
because I mean, it's such a superfood for those who can tolerate it.
I think now with the emergence of carnivore and paleo and all of those kinds of diets, there are lots of websites where they'll compile a list of farmers and places you can go where you can get that stuff. So if you're really serious, yeah, I shouldn't say it's that hard. It's just that you have to do a little bit of research and then you can get it. But yeah, it's not like any grocery store where you can just walk in and get it.
Yeah. And I don't know what's your view, but honestly, for me, I don't think that's something that makes a major difference. Like, is it worth to try to find raw milk with cats and dogs? Or can you get the nutrients and the stuff that you have in the milk from other things? Maybe some people need it for the calcium. I don't know, but
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary. I mean,
mm,
here's the thing, in the last, what, 0.01% of our existence as a species here on Earth, only did we start consuming dairy. So just 10,000 to 12,000 years ago when the agricultural revolution happened, that's when there was so much pressure on us as a species to adapt to get our calories from a new food source because the mainly carnivorous diet that we were subsisting on, we couldn't do that anymore because of climate change and overhunting those large animals. And so that means for 99.99% of our existence, for millions of years, we mainly ate meat. And then in the last
yeah.
just 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, which is just 0.001% of our existence, we started eating other foods like grains, beans, and dairy. So if
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So that leads me to believe that there is nothing inherently critical that we need to get from dairy. Not to mention, if you dig up the skeletons before versus after the agricultural revolution, you can see how our bones started getting more rickety, more diseased. We started getting shorter. Our brain sizes shrunk. Our jaws shrunk. We started seeing misalignment of the teeth for the first time in history. So just looking at the skeletons of the carnivorous era, which is the paleo era, and then the agricultural era, and you compare them. So that also leads me to believe that we were probably a more robust species. So we had to pay a very heavy cost with our health in order to survive as a species. Because if we didn't
Yeah.
deviate, we would have starved to death.
Yeah, and I do believe that listening to your body is still the best navigator in the realm of diets. That if, like, for example, in my case, I don't care how many articles I read about the benefits, health benefits of milk. If I put it in my body and I get flare-ups, I'm not going to do it. I respect my body too much to do that.
I love that you mentioned that. Yes, at the end of the day, don't be a passive learner. Be an active learner. Anything you listen to, you read, what you get exposed to, it really will only make sense to you if you apply it and you see like the n equal 1 experiment and see how does that work with you, because we all have different genes, we all have different lifestyles, different stress levels, different histories. All those things can affect how we react to different diets or different lifestyles. So but then that means it's more work on your part, right? And that's where it gets tricky for a lot of people. Wouldn't it be great if you just listen to an expert on one topic for once in our lives and everything they say and we apply it and it works and then move on to the next problem as opposed to having to troubleshoot everything. But
Yeah, and
that's
this can get very hard. Like, I think it's almost an illusion now in the social media world. Um, we see a lot of this influencing where people say like, oh, I just did this and everything's solved and I never had any problems anymore. For me, it took over 10 years to even go through all of the testing, all of the interventions, still like listening different experts, trying out different stuff, trying, failing again. Like it's a long path, especially if you are battling with chronic illness. It's not easy. So yeah, that would be the dream scenario, what you described.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's the reality couldn't be further away, sort of.
Yeah. And then another thing is that once you are, we position ourselves as experts and we're selling our services, and we feel like if we open up about something we're struggling with, then then that takes away from the credibility of everything else that we have to offer. I think that's very tricky when you are in the health field. You're expected to be 1,000% healthy and not have any mental health dips or physical dips or whatever. And that's just not real life, you know? Like we're not we're not perfect specimens, you know? And that is something I notice because sometimes like there'll be something that I know I could share, but then I double guess myself. I was like, maybe I shouldn't, you know, because
Yeah.
people can take that. Oh, if she's not 1,000% healthy, then everything else she says doesn't make sense. And yeah, it's a
But
tricky
I
situation.
think it's relative because we must acknowledge that, for example, in my case, I came into a place where I was in pain 28 days a month, in a pain where I was literally not able to function. And now I am functioning every day without pain. And even if I have migraine every now and then, like once a month, um, I have not, I've improved to 99%, and the likelihood of that happening is very small. And I do believe that, well, I don't work a lot with migraine patients because I'm not a neurologist. I work with a different kind of brain things that people want to improve our mental health or longevity. But we always, for example, the premise in cognitive behavioral therapy is that you are a team with your client. So you too, with your combined knowledge, the client with his or her self-knowledge, and me with the knowledge in the field that I'm in, we combine the knowledge and we make an intervention and a strategy together as a team. And I think this is what a lot of people want and benefit from. Someone to sort of walk hand in hand the journey and to be able to revise, is this strategy actually scientifically or clinically relevant or working, and can it work for them? And this is, I think, the golden route for the healing oftentimes. So,
Yeah,
yeah, like, I mean, you bleed, I bleed, everyone bleeds. We are all human, but we can all still help each other in
that is
our
so
area of
true.
expertise. Yeah.
I agree 100%. And yeah, it's like how much have you progressed? I think that that's the best barometer, you know, because I do think like even for me, if I'm taking advice from somebody, I want to make sure they achieved something in that area, you know, because you're not going to take financial advice from somebody who's broke, you know.
Mm.
So I agree. I think that's beautiful, the way that you put it. So let's go back to the pain journey. That's very
Yeah.
interesting. It was muscular pain, which is why they may have diagnosed you with fibromyalgia. Was it joint pain? Was it everything together?
Yeah, so it all started with just the headaches and migraines. And then throughout the years, I got different symptoms. I got joint pain, I got stomach pain, I got the acne, I
Mm,
got, yeah, but the migraine was always the biggest issue for me. And the fibromyalgia and those things came because I did complain the joint pain, and they didn't really find any reason for it. And I have a knee surgery done because there was something a little bit off. But turns out it was just water, excessive water. But they're like, this is indicative of inflammation, but we don't know why you have inflammation in your joints. So it was never really found out. What I suspect is that it's just all related to inflammation because migraines are related to neuroinflammation, and that's the characteristic of almost any condition, chronic illness
Mm.
condition. There is always some chronic inflammation on under the surface.
Yeah, I used to suffer from headaches too. Not, I wouldn't say it's a migraine. I would say like a 2 hour headache, you know?
Oh gosh, I'm
Um,
sorry.
yeah, but it's gone now. And I think the biggest lever that I've played around with that has helped is mainly carnivore. Um, and coffee, I would say. I don't know. I used to think it was also the coffee, but then I went back and I was drinking coffee for multiple months lately, and I still wouldn't have headaches. So I don't think it's just that, or maybe it was a combination, just eating normal foods. Even when I would eat keto, I think it was still not 100% resolved. So I think for me, carnivore or as close to carnivore as possible is has been like the biggest game changer in terms of not getting headaches. Because every time I would get stressed, it really was getting more frequent over time. You spend the whole day at school and there's stress there. You come home, you have to work, always feeling like I never felt, even though I graduated like as a straight A student, it's so funny. I never ever felt prepared for any exam.
Mm.
It's such a, it's like this perfectionist thing comes from childhood trauma, never feeling like you're enough, all that kind of stuff. So I think that stress always played into it as well. So, but yeah, once I figured it out, finally, I don't deal with that anymore. But I know exactly the struggle of you can't do anything when you have a headache or a migraine. It's debilitating.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think what carnivore does, it reduces a lot of those things that may cause inflammation in the body, especially biotoxins,
Mm.
things like mold or sugar or alcohol or antinutrients from the plants that if you have inflammation already, if you have compromised gut integrity or gut microbiome,
Yes.
may cause you more inflammation compared to a state where, for example, your gut health would be in a normal level, or if you didn't have any underlying inflammation. So I think carnivore is a good way to sort of reduce any excessive inflammatory agent that might be causing you that heightened level of stress and well inflammation, which then when gut detects these inflammatory markers and the liver, it will also compromise the blood-brain barrier,
Mm.
which will then also start leaking, and the inflammatory markers can get into the brain, which causes headaches, which causes stress, which causes disturbance in the way that your prefrontal cortex is even able to sort of downregulate your emotional centers. So you might be feeling like heightened stress. And I actually think many people these days are suffering like low level neuroinflammation symptoms due to food processing and due to might be even an after effect of COVID. Something
Mm.
has compromised the inflammatory system. And
Yes.
yeah. And then therefore, when we think about like mental health and healing and just managing conditions, I think addressing the neuroinflammation is also extremely important.
Yeah, I was reading this paper last night about chronic inflammatory diseases. It's
Mm,
relatively recent. I think it came out in 2020. And it talked about just the exponential rise in CID, chronic inflammatory diseases. So like long COVID, like
mm,
like all the other autoimmune and pretty much everything you can think of really can be traced down to an heightened level of inflammation. And they were talking about how all disease begins in the gut, and
mm,
leaky gut is really where it starts. And the two biggest triggers, the two strongest triggers of leaky gut, where your intestines lose their strong barrier function. And so now partially digested molecules of food can cross into the blood, and also the bacteria, both good and bad bacteria in the gut, also can cross into, and some of the stuff that they produce can also cross into your blood, and that activates your immune system. And they said the
Yeah.
two biggest triggers for that were zonulin or gluten. Basically, when you eat
Mm-hmm.
grains that have gluten, it increases this protein called zonulin, and zonulin literally pries open the tight junctions in between your gut cells, and so you have more intestinal permeability. And the second biggest thing was an overgrowth of bacteria, which I find is very common, SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, when you just have larger than normal amounts of bacteria in the small intestine, because usually you're supposed to have the greatest amount of bacteria in your large intestine. As you go down the digestive tract, their numbers start to grow gradually, and so in the small intestine you should have a little bit less than in the large intestine. But when you have this imbalance, you have overgrowth in your small intestine. That's why it's called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And apparently that is also just as much of a strong trigger for leaky gut, as gluten or grains.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is so important what you just said about the SIBO, because we must acknowledge that small intestine is the absorption site for all the most important brain vitamins and minerals like iron, like B12, those things, MCTs. So the things that your brain need the most, if that absorption site is compromised, you are probably going to feel brain fogged, you are going to feel fatigued, you
Yeah.
are going to feel dizziness, confusion, getting these low-level neuropsychological symptoms. And I have friends who are like my age in their 40s or 30s, and they are thinking that they are getting Alzheimer's because of they have suffered, I don't know, like maybe COVID, long COVID, and they say like, I never recovered. And this is directly related to neural inflammation. So just
Yeah.
gut health is absolutely crucial for our brain health. Also, because it's the production side of many neurotransmitters or neuromodulators that have their own specific functions inside the gut. So, serotonin is so important for digestion of the food in the gut, in the GI tract. So, it's one of the most important things. And I think in gut health, testing the gut health regularly, especially if you have had food poisoning, have been on antibiotics, have been on traveling and have like weird gut symptoms, just
Mm.
testing the GI 360. So that's a test that checks all of your gut microbiota. You can see if you have dysbiosis, if you have a good balance of good bacteria or bad bacteria. Testing that, maybe testing SIBO if you have the symptoms as well.
Yeah.
And from there, it's like so much easier to navigate
Mm.
forward.
Let's talk about where people can get those tests. So the GI 360, I usually have generally recommend the Genova Diagnostics one, or the DRZALDIVAR comprehensive stool analysis, where they use the PCR DNA technology.
Mm.
I haven't heard of the one that you just mentioned. So where can people find that?
Yeah, so GI 360 is from Nordic Labs in Europe.
Mm.
So I use those tests with my clients. It's one of the biggest independent laboratories. They do both scientific research and laboratories, and they have a clinic
Mm-hmm.
for these tests. They have all sorts of functional tests from their selection. Like what I really love and recommend is the GI 360. Of course, Dutch test. They have the hormone tests. They have mycotox tests, so you can test if you have mycotoxins, so mold particles inside your body, which is another big reason for brain fog
Mm.
and why people feel depressed, for
Yes.
example. Yeah, so that's in Europe. I don't know. Yeah, maybe I have seen some other independent. I really don't know what you have in the US. In Europe, this is the most popular option.
Yeah, I think the most popular here, like I mentioned, is the doctor's data series of tests, like the heavy metal testing, the comprehensive stool analysis testing, and the Genova one, the Genova Diagnostics one. Those are
Mm.
probably the biggest ones that I always hear about. Almost all functional medicine doctors use, and I've used on myself as well, and they're great. But I think we have the one that you mentioned, the Nordic Labs as well. I believe, I'm not sure. And then
Yeah,
you
I've
have to like
had
apply. Yeah,
yeah, I've had clients in the US and I have been
yeah,
able to deliver those
the
tests
kits.
there.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, I wanted to ask you about, oh, let's do one more thing, the SIBO. So for the SIBO, the way that they measure it is the breath test. Did you ever do your own SIBO test?
Yeah.
Okay, and you did it in Europe.
I did it at home. I don't remember how did they test. Maybe it was an urine analysis, I think, the
It's
SIBO.
you breathe out and they measure. I mean, I think there are multiple ways to test. The one that I generally will recommend as like the gold standard is the Trio
Mm-hmm.
Smart test, which is a breath test, and it's like around $300. And you can go ahead and
Oh,
people
right.
can.
This was the, yeah, now I remember this breath test.
Yeah,
Right,
you
yeah.
you drink different solutions of different types of sugars. And as the bacteria, because you have an overgrowth, so there's tons of bacteria, so they start fermenting those sugars you're eating or drinking. And as a byproduct of the fermentation, there's a lot of gas production.
Mm.
And that gas goes actually into your blood, and then from the blood goes into your lungs, gets exchanged, and then you breathe it out. And depending on how much hydrogen or methane or sulfur hydrogen sulfide you exhale, they can determine how much SIBO you have, whether you have it or not. And if you do have it, is it methane dominant, hydrogen dominant, or the other one? And they might have different symptoms. Some might be more related to having more constipation or more diarrhea, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
There's this new tool that I've been recommending to my clients, and it's been a real game changer. It's called the Food Marble Air 2. And it's an at-home device that measures hydrogen and methane. Unfortunately, they don't have the sulfide one yet. Um, and it tells you after you eat any meal, you breathe into it and it tells you what your hydrogen and methane levels are. So I had a client where we were helping her with her SIBO, and the one, like, she was doing great, perfect, everything great. But she kept the coffee decaf, not even with caffeine, the decaf coffee. Every time she would drink it, her levels of the gases, I can't remember if it was the hydrogen or the methane, would shoot up. And she only figured that
Oh,
out just from this device. It's a game changer. It's like $250. You want to make sure you get the second one. Don't get the Food Marble first one because that's an older generation. The second one is better because it adds one more gas that it measures. um
wow, okay.
yeah, it's really it's very helpful for people, and then you wouldn't need as much discipline to force yourself to not have a certain food, because once you see the result, like if you have this food, you have increased fermentation and you have increased symptoms too. Usually when you have high levels of fermentation, you have increased symptoms for your SIBO, which could be so many things, because SIBO could be the root cause of pretty much everything you can think of. So
Mm.
you start realizing, oh wow, I have heightened symptoms. Let me check. It's like, oh wow, I have a lot of fermentation. And it's like, what is it that I ate that caused that? And then you can identify your trigger foods,
Mm. Well, that's very convenient.
right? Yeah. So cool.
I love all of these real-time analysis. A lot of the health testing are snapshots, and whenever you can get real-time data,
Yes.
especially in terms of, for example, blood sugar, it's just
Yes.
so much more informative.
Yeah, and I love that technology is helping us collect massive amounts of data in real time that we can use, as opposed to just being able to see a doctor once a month or whatever. And some people can't even see a doctor because it's, especially here in the United States, don't get me started, it's very expensive. So, it's very hard to piece together all the elements of your health if you're just relying on those infrequent visits and just a single test here, a single test there. So as technology keeps getting better and better, we're already seeing all these things that are at home devices that are continuously monitoring, like the CGMs, continuous glucose monitors,
Mm.
like the Food Marble. I'm sure in the future they're going to add all the gases in it so you can check all the different kinds of SIBOs. So it's exciting, and I'm like the biggest nerd, and I love all the biohacking stuff. As a matter of fact, when you started following me on Instagram, I was like, wait a second, Inka Land. And I checked your thing, and it's like, oh my God, she's Seem Land's wife. And I've been following Seem for a very long time, because
Oh, really?
yes, I've always been a huge nerd.
Okay,
And
that's funny.
yeah, his content, like I love that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, I couldn't believe it. I was so happy.
Well, I was very happy to find you too. So here we
Thank
are.
you. Thank you. Yes, yes, here we are. We're so similar in so many ways. Like, I didn't realize how, I think the music thing, I had no idea you were into music too.
Yeah, that's probably one of the reasons that I was like, okay, I need to talk to this woman because I was like, she does like all the cool stuff, like your music, you do beats, you publish your own music. That's amazing. And that's so much hard work. Like that takes dedication, and that is not easy. So,
Yes, it's like two careers, like the science stuff, posting content, seeing clients and coaching, and then music, which you don't have enough hours in the day because the more you work, the better you get, which is exactly what you need to do to finally get a hit. It's not that easy to get a hit. And so yeah, hence why I'm not having
how
babies. It's like
yeah,
music is my
how
baby.
how do you maintain your brain? I mean, that's cognitively very demanding. Do you do micro rests or is it a diet? What is your secret for such a brain performance throughout the day?
Mm, that's a great question. Music is such a big passion of mine that I don't have to convince myself. Like I just am lost when like when I'm writing a song, searching for beats, learning about how to produce things better, how to get better vocals. It's like the thing that I do that requires the least amount of discipline or trying to focus. The way I cannot do something if I'm not 100% excited about or I really want to do, which is why I can't be an employee. It's like pulling teeth to get me to do anything. You
Mm,
know? I have like a lot of motivation for the things I want to do, and I have zero motivation for the things that I don't want to do. There's no in between, you see? So I think a lot of like I really struggled with focusing when I was finishing up my dissertation because I already knew I didn't want to be an academic professor. Like
mm,
I'm making more money now, or just around the same amount of money that my professor who founded the kinesiology department at the University of Miami. I mean, she's worked all her life to set up the kinesiology department. She was my doctoral advisor, full professor. It's about, I think she may have retired now. I don't know. And by the end of it, she was like maybe making 120K. And now in like
mm.
my first year, well, no, I shouldn't say my first year of business, but the first year of actually making money from my business, I'm already. And so this is why I did not this is why it was very hard for me to focus, and you could say the brain fog and all that stuff. And I was also eating crap because I was depressed. So it was just Domino's pizza and like Taco Bell. That was my food for a while there.
Yeah.
So of course that right away you eat carbs, like my brain dies. I can't focus on anything at all. I can't be productive. And so there was that. Another major thing that helped with my brain is the first time I ever discovered keto, and I did keto for the first week. By the seventh day, I had no idea I had brain fog until it lifted on the seventh day.
Yeah.
Right? So that's when I was sold on low carb and keto and carnivore eventually.
I have witnessed this from so many people that when we started working on the brain health, like I had no clue that I had brain fog or that I had anxiety or that I had stress. But now I feel like transformed. It's like a different, and the same happened to me. Of course, I knew that I was in pain when I was in pain, but the life that I'm living now compared to what I was living, I never knew that it would be possible. Sometimes I'm like in tears when I think about what I thought my life would be for the rest of my life, and I had accepted that already. And now I think back and I'm like, oh gosh, I wish I could go back and tell that girl, you know. who was suffering that it's gonna get better. And like just the shift, like how you can feel different as a human being when you change your habits and strategies. And as you said, like at the beginning, we discussed that the power of metabolic strategies like ketones, like diet. And you also said that that was one of the biggest things, as well as the mindset.
Yes. Oh, the mindset is, I agree with you. I think it's like 90% of everything, if not more, probably more. The
Mm.
mindset is, I also need to add raising baseline dopamine levels, which we talked about on the interview where you interviewed me on your channel. And I think most of my audience already knows that, but it's basically, the harder you train, the more you increase the amount of dopamine and dopamine receptors in your brain, and you increase pain threshold, and that leads to, and you increase BDNF, brain derived neurotrophic factor, which is kind of like fertilizer for your brain. And so all those things can really open up one's brain. And you can do that with strength training. You can do that with cardio. Cardio might be a little bit more effective just because you're uncomfortably working out for a longer period of time. Whereas with the strength training, you're taking a lot of breaks in between. So if you add up all the times and the minutes under tension, it's usually a little longer with the cardio, which is why it can raise your baseline dopamine level more. So I think all those things, but yeah, I would say the mindset, following your passion, which again brings us back to music, which is why I'm doing music. It's like when you listen to your intuition, when your gut feeling and you trust it, and it can be very, very scary because if your intuition is telling you something, it's like, this is so unrealistic. Like, come on. And so you gotta overcome that. Your intuition never lies, and I think if you follow that and you're aligned with your gut feeling, with your intuition, which for me, the way that I interpret what our intuition is like our subconscious intelligence. Our conscious intelligence is right now, you and me having a conversation. We can only focus on so many things. We're focused on this conversation, but my subconscious mind and yours they're picking up all of the stuff. Like I can see what's outside my window right now from the corner of my eye. I'm not paying attention to it, but my brain is picking all that stuff up and it goes into my subconscious brain. So our subconscious brain is so much more intelligent because it has accumulated so much trillions and trillions of data points over a lifetime. But for it to communicate that to your conscious mind in a fast enough method, it can't sit you down and be like, let me give you a presentation that'll never end for all the trillion data points that I've amassed, why you should pursue this, why you should do this or that. So how does your subconscious mind send you all this wealth of data in a feasible time frame? Through emotions. And so it sends it via either positive or negative emotion. So when you get excited about something, it's your subconscious mind sending you an insane amount, something we can't even comprehend how much data it's sending us via this emotion. So when it's positive, it's like, do this. Yes, that's true. And when it sends you a negative emotion, when you get depressed or whatever, it's like, that means your subconscious mind is telling you whatever you just thought right now, that's a lie. Like, or don't do that. And that's how I interpret intuition, and
Mm.
listening to your gut feeling. And so I think when you're aligned with that, um, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. One thing I want to like discern, I did just a recent Instagram post about this actually, like gut feeling or intuition versus negativity bias.
Mm.
So sometimes when we are stressed or we are anxious or ill or sleep deprived, we are getting a negativity bias. So this is all it's related to biology of the brain. Technically, the stress axis activates. It makes our prefrontal cortex a little bit lower in activity. It makes our amygdala shoot up in activity, which is the center for emotional reaction, most often fear or anxiety. But sometimes when we have this state of mind, we are very reactive. We are very fast to react. We see all the negative stuff around us, and our attentional system is actually skewed to notice negative things. So, for example, negative faces. And our attentional system is also skewed to interpret even neutral things as negative.
Mm.
So, I just made the post about intuition is more like this kind of certain, secure feeling that this is what I should do. It feels like calm. It feels somehow, you cannot explain why it feels right, but you may have the gut feeling that, okay, this is the right thing to do. And the time frame for that feels like bigger. Whereas when you are driven by your negativity bias, you might be scared or fearful or anxious. And that's not always something that you want to listen, because it can actually prevent you from what you
Yes.
want to do. So like it's more of like negativity bias and confirmation bias than intuition. But as you said, the
Oh,
intuition
I
is
love it.
more of this like calm, like,
Yes.
or this like a gut feeling, like this is right. When you're able to like ask yourself, like, am I reacting from an emotion, or does it just feel inherently fruitful?
I think you're raising a very important point, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like uh, I know exactly what you mean. Like if I'm tired, if I didn't get enough sleep, sometimes things in our physiology change the way which parts of our brain are more activated, like the amygdala, for example, more so than the other parts of the brain. And then we have that negativity bias, and so it's harder for us to connect to the intuition. That's the way that I interpret it. You can't, yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Because you're afraid of everything a little bit.
exactly. This is why people who are, let's say, always depressed, always in a bad mood, always maybe they're addicted to drugs, or maybe they don't take care of their physical health, physical brain, you lose that connection because then it's constantly down. You can't detect highs and lows. You want to be able to detect highs and lows. Ideally, you always want to be pretty high. And then, but sometimes you should be able to detect the lows. Like if you had a thought that's not, that your gut wants to tell you, don't believe that thought, that you should be able to detect it via this negative emotion. It might be transient and very quick. We should be able to detect it.
Absolutely. And this is so important, though. Like where we come here is there is a school of thought that you just need to reframe everything into positive. I think this can be extremely harmful, because the more you're able to just dissociate your reactivity from your emotions, it's called emotional diffusion. It's a tool from acceptance and commitment therapy. So you're able to observe your emotions and kind of question, where does it come from? What does it ask me to do? Why am I feeling like this? And then you're better able to take meaningful action. If it's something that you're afraid, you may feel like anxious, and the emotional reactivity may be like, okay, I'm not going to do it. I'm anxious. It's scary, whatever. That prevents you from taking action. But if you can diffuse your emotion, look from further, why am I afraid? Or actually, it's not that big of a deal. Actually, is it likely to happen? What is the best case scenario, the worst case scenario? What is the possible case scenario, the most likeliest? And you
Yeah.
are like able to start involving your prefrontal cortex and calculating. You may be able to negate that negative emotion just by your rational thinking.
Yes,
And
I
I think
love
that's
that.
so much more
Yeah.
um constructive for you as a human being than just thinking like, oh well, I'm just gonna go for shopping a little bit because I'm feeling anxious about this thing that I actually want to do, in a
Right.
sense.
Right. I love that tool. Because sometimes, like anytime you want to do something that's gonna grow you, there's gonna be a little bit of friction. If there's no friction, you're not really growing, right? It's like, for
Mm.
example, the YouTube videos that do the best for me, usually there's a little bit of like, should I post this? I don't know. Like sometimes you open up too much. And that little bit of fear is an indication that I grew beyond my comfort zone, and that's a good thing. And so you want to kind of like you mentioned, take a step back and see, okay, this emotion that I'm feeling, is this a growth emotion? It's like, am I feeling the resistance because if I do this I'm gonna grow and it feels a little uncomfortable to grow? Or is there other reasons why? Maybe you just didn't get enough sleep. Maybe, I mean, there's
Yeah,
just could be so many things. I love that tool.
absolutely.
we're getting a therapy session today, which is
Yeah.
actually my favorite topic. That's what I do. You notice, like, when you're working with clients, for me, they come to me usually for diet most of the time. Although there's a bunch for social media too now. I didn't realize how much there is like a hunger for growing an online brand, and I'm glad people are realizing how important that is. But when I'm working with somebody, usually let's say for weight loss, it almost always ends up being 90 to 99% all mindset talk, because everybody
Mm.
knows cake is bad, right? It's not, there's certain basic tenets for weight loss that we all know, but it's sticking to it. And then that goes into setting boundaries, people pleasing, time management, feeling uninspired by your current job. It's all psychology,
Mm. Yeah,
right?
for sure. I mean, any change requires our brain to change, and that requires us to think differently. It can
Yeah.
be so difficult, but luckily it's possible. But change is not easy, but it is like inherently our quality that we can do it. We just need the right, I guess, a mentor or coach for that.
100%. Well, somebody who, especially if somebody walked that walk before, was struggled like you did and was able to overcome that, they can really relate to you. They understand exactly what you're talking about, as opposed to, somebody who just never struggled with that thing and they're just like read it from a book or from some podcast or whatever, and they're just kind of repeating it. I think it makes a really huge difference in the client coach relationship.
Yeah, I
Mm,
think sometimes it's easier to relate to those coaches who have been walking the same path. I tend to naturally gravitate if I have something I want to achieve to the people who have done it before or have similar experience. But I think the most important thing, it can be a book as well, and it can be someone who hasn't done it, but it needs to come in a form, the information that clicks within your brain and
yes,
cause the shift inside yourself, the client.
yes,
Because
yes,
even a coach who has walked the path but is not able to make kind of like that click, like why it matters or
yes,
what they can achieve if they try, then yeah, everything is about like just making the person itself, himself, themselves to kind of see the new alternative reality. Oh, you talk about visualization. That's an amazing tool for that.
yes. Oh, it's an obsession of mine. I learned how to meditate a while ago when I just landed in Miami, and right away they throw you to start teaching courses, and I had had like zero public speaking experience, and yeah, I would get a lot of anxiety. I remember like walking towards the classroom where I would be teaching, and I would feel my heart beating out of my chest. Later on, I realized I just was underprepared and I should have been overprepared. And just like my idea of what it means to be overprepared, I just didn't have those tools to know how hard you needed to work on something to get really comfortable with it. So I needed to do
Mm.
a lot of nutrition education, and I needed to teach a lot of hours before I really felt comfortable. And so anybody who's struggling with public speaking, I can guarantee you it goes away to zero in that niche. Now you send me off to give you a physics lecture, I'm gonna have anxiety, if I'm not prepared. So, but
I
I
can
didn't know
relate
that.
to it. This, yeah, when I was doing my first YouTube videos, I like re-recorded and I was mumbling and nobody was watching. I don't know what I was afraid of. It was like a plastic camera in front of me or whatever, my laptop. I could just see myself and I was still so nervous.
Yeah,
But repetition, repetition,
reps
repetition.
way more than what you think you need. That's the trick, because I thought, okay, well, I repeated it 3, 4 times the lecture, not enough. Repeat it more, especially initially, and then you don't need to, like, in the last few years of teaching, I would just like roll out of bed and start teaching. Like, oh, which chapter are we on? Like, eventually it becomes like automatic. zero anxiety. But yeah, like the biggest tip, reps in everything, really, in everything.
If
Music,
you
business.
ever feel if you ever feel like you are not making progress or doing enough or this is never going to happen to me, this here's a tip for the listeners. Go to YouTube. There is an amazing clip of two neurons, nerve cells, slowly rewiring. They're like approach. It looks like it takes forever, and you get like anxious, like, okay, they're not gonna achieve the connection ever, but then finally they'll connect. And it's like the most beautiful moment, like
Wow.
then that connection happened, and that's the brain rewiring. Maybe you can search for two synapses or neurons rewiring. There is this clip, it has like
Uh-huh.
11 million views, and I
Uh-huh.
love watching it whenever I feel like
I
nothing is
added that
fitting.
to the syllabus of every semester that I would teach. I added it to the syllabus. That's how important I believe that brain rewiring was, you know? Yeah. And I added a bunch. There was two, like a 2-minute one, and there was a longer version one. And it shows you how with reps, the brain, like exactly what you just said, it rewires, it connects. And then the beautiful thing, not only does it connect, but also it gets thicker. Like the connection, you start having more connections and thicker connections, so that that thing you're rehearsing becomes automatic, and it's very fast and automatic, and there's no more emotional and or physical pain or resistance or friction associated with you doing that, you know? So you can roll out
Absolutely.
of bed and perform. Yeah. I love it. So the reason I was saying that is I learned how to meditate during that period of time around 2012, 2013. I started teaching because I was getting so much anxiety and trying to figure out. That's how I discovered keto, because it was mainly for the anxiety that I was having, and the mental health benefits. Then I realized, oh, it's also great for body composition. So, and it did the keto, and then I learned how to meditate using the Headspace app. And I would wake up like at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, meditate for 2 hours straight. And it was great because it laid down the foundation for how to focus on the breath and how to meditate. And lately, the visualizations have been life changing. Visualizing whatever it is you're struggling with. We all have goals that we want to achieve, right? Like for me, for example, I want to be able to work even harder on music and on everything. And so that means less distractions. And so to be able to do that, you have to be able to see it first in your mind. Whatever it is you're struggling, let's say you're struggling with discipline, you're struggling with sugar addiction, and you constantly get stressed. And you, the first thing you have, the first thought you have is, I'm gonna reach for a cookie. If you do a visualization of you in that moment of feeling resistance, and then not reaching for the cookie. So you're visualizing yourself being stressed out to the max and yet still not reaching for the cookie. I termed this a training visualization. I actually gave them names in my guide, the Monster Mindset Guide. The training visualization trains your brain to believe that you are so disciplined, because that's the beautiful part about it. Your brain cannot differentiate between a real scenario that actually happened and a visualized scenario. So when they've done tests where they get two groups of people, half of them actually learn the piano, the other half just rehearses that piece of music, and they both get equal results. Some studies show 50% results, some other studies show equal results. And then when they test them, they can both play that piece beautifully. And so this is how powerful training visualization is. It literally gets you the reps that you need much faster, because if you don't do the training visualization for letting the cookie down and not reaching for it when you're stressed out, how many times can you rehearse that so that you actually become disciplined and you actually become, it becomes easy for you to let go of the addictive foods, right? You're going to have to wait for maybe once or twice a day, sometimes maybe every other day you'll get an episode of stress, and that's your opportunity to rehearse the disciplined action. But if you do a training visualization, you can get hundreds of reps in one day. It compresses the amount of time, and so you are just crazy, crazy, uh, um, well rehearsed or well trained. Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimmer, he would do like 2 hours. There is not one single peak performer that does not understand how powerful training visualizations are, and they do it for way longer than you think they do it for, and that's why they win.
Yeah, I love that comparison, like what you said about meditation and visualization, that meditation is so good for getting that basics of how to focus and how to stay, how to calm your nervous system, how to center your mind, how to get, I would say, inside your head, because maybe you feel it as well, but when you go into meditation, you kind of, I feel like I step into the room inside my head. And now I
Yeah.
start working. And then you use a tool. This is actually what I talked about in my TEDx talk that I gave in 2018 about how I overcame the pain from migraine. And that
Oh,
was meditation. Like the first tool that I used was meditation. And I was visualizing myself sort of uh, like the pain was like a radio in the background. And I was like just stepping out from that pain. And that's what I actually rehearsed. And that was my savior, because I was really like despondent at the time. I felt like I was at the nadir of my emotions when I started meditation. I was ready to give up, basically. And that was the only tool that I hadn't yet tried. Sort of, this was after medications, before all the diet, lifestyle things. Meditation was my bridge to that. So when I got that
wow.
distance from the pain, I was able to start actually working on it.
That is so
Yeah.
beautiful. So from what age to what age did you live? I cannot wrap my head around how much pain you must have gone through. Like that's
I
so
was I was born with the migraine. So that was my mother even remembers me like crying a lot when I was a baby, and then the neurologist told that it's probably because I had so much headache already. I remember my first very severe one at 3 age old.
wow.
And I got my diagnosis when I got referred to child neurologist at the age of 5 or 6.
That, and and you still went to school, kindergarten, all that kind of stuff. Like how do you function with constant headaches and migraines? Especially as a
That was
kid.
the
You have
struggle.
no
Yeah,
clue.
that was the struggle. Like I was in immense pain, but I was, as you said, this perfectionist. I think it came from the fact that I was in pain. So I was like, I needed to prove something. I don't know. And I was maybe half time in school, half time at home. And I was also straight A student, but just pushing, pushing, pushing. Um, I don't know. It was just pushing a lot. And I learned to do stuff in pain.
You adapted to it.
Yeah. And I
Wow.
can still, I think the meditation was so big. Like before that, it was struggling. And then I learned the meditation, and I learned to sort of just be with the pain and kind of differentiate myself. Then I run into all of the studies that they use mindfulness-based stress reduction with chronic pain patients as well.
Mm,
And it doesn't actually reduce the physiological pain when you measure the pain, but it does reduce the perception of the pain.
yeah.
So I think this is like exactly what you said about the visualization. If you have cravings, if you're
Yeah.
trying to really, really push something,
Yeah.
you train. Um, it doesn't necessarily make it easier, but it makes it, feel
It
like you
feels
don't care
easier.
about it. Yeah, you don't care about it being so hard because you
Yes.
train to tolerate the hard thing.
Yes. And I know when I've succeeded, if let's say I'm really tired and I have to get up and work, I need to get, let's say, a new song because I put deadlines on myself how many songs I need to put out because otherwise I'll just be creating all the because it's so easy to just create more content that makes money, right now, which is the nutrition stuff is and all that kind of stuff. So um when I'm super tired and I just really have zero motivation to get up and start working. I just rehearse it, and there's resistance even in my head, even though I'm just sitting on a couch. I'm rehearsing myself getting off the couch and going and working on the music. And I know it worked after a few times, the resistance in my head goes away. So you know it's working when even the painful emotion, this discomfort of you trying to focus on it in your brain, in your visualization, that resistance eventually, after enough reps, it goes away, and then you just get up and you do it, and there's no resistance.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. And yeah, I think we both have really lived the powerful effects of both meditation and, I believe, visualization. For you, it's the really it's the visualization that allowed you to kind of overcome or change the perception of the pain. It's just so powerful.
Mm.
Yeah, cool. All right, let's talk about two things. The anti-aging stuff, and I want to see how you came across to give the TEDx talk. I think those are two interesting things. And then if there's anything else that can really be helpful also that we haven't touched upon, let me know and we can talk about that.
Mm. So where do you want to start?
Let's start with the anti-aging stuff first.
Mm-hmm. So what do you want to talk about?
How did you get into that?
Ah, right, the anti-aging. Okay, so I guess it all started with the brain health because having had a brain condition, neurological condition, I realized that I must improve the health of the organ that is suffering, which was my brain. And you could argue that that's systemic as well. But of course, when you are thinking about your brain, you must think about your whole neuroendocrine system, your whole peripheral nervous system, all the organs that your brain attaches to, which is your whole body. And then when I did my studies, I got quite interested in Alzheimer's disease and neurodegeneration. And I'm like, whoa, there is like so much data on how we can possibly reduce the risk of Alzheimer's. And that's such a horrible, horrible condition. I just actually recently lost my grandmother to Alzheimer's. And just seeing someone to gradually fade away is the worst thing that you can witness. And that was also a big fuel recently for me to just keep going, thinking about how can we reduce the burden of aging and chronic disease so that we can reduce the burden of living life in such condition that many people have to live. Of course, my husband is all into longevity, and he just released his new book, or it's releasing now, and he's biological age. So if you believe in those things, biological versus chronological age, is extremely young. He's 16 biologically, 16 or 18, depending on the test. So of course, that fueled. So we got married 2 years ago, and he was like, he's always been so much into the longevity stuff. So I learned a lot also from him because he's looking at the ways of extending lifespan, which is another area of sort of anti-aging. So we have extending health span, so living as healthy as long as possible, and also extending lifespan, which is just living as long as possible.
Yeah. What is the name of his new book? Let's plug it in this.
Long, yes, longevity leap. So
Long-
you leap through the chronic
Hmm.
illness or
I love
over them, and then you
it.
just live for.
Is it already on Amazon and everywhere so I can link it?
Not
Later.
yet. It
Oh, not yet.
comes out, I think, in like 2 weeks or something, but the
Okay.
pre-order,
You
it's
can pre-order.
possible to pre-order it right now. It's
Longevity
massive.
Leap.
Yes.
Perfect. I have so many of his, and now it keeps coming up on my feed. It's like the algorithm, maybe because I've been watching a lot of anti-aging content lately, and so a lot of his seems YouTube videos on the different people with their different reversal of aging. I'm adding them all to my anti-aging playlist, so I'm excited to watch them.
Those are so popular. Like I think it's one thing to know the science of longevity. Like,
Yeah,
okay, studies show that if you reduce your amount of sugar or if you exercise, you can reduce your risk of Alzheimer's by 40%. So that's one thing.
yeah,
The second thing is to know someone who has had Alzheimer's or has Alzheimer's or something, and they are able to reverse their cognitive decline, so they are able to restore their functional decline. Or like he recently made a video of this, I think 50, I don't remember, 50, maybe 5-year-old woman who has very slow biological aging rate, and she spends only a little bit over $100 per month to her longevity and health. So
That,
of course,
yeah,
to learn like what do these people do differently, that's
yes.
very interesting, and that is something that we can of course mimic and follow.
I am obsessed with all the anti-aging content. I really want to cure it and try to help people understand that aging is not the reason why people aren't working as hard as they could or funding it as hard as they could is because there's this notion that aging is natural and death is natural and
Mm,
there's nothing we can do or whatever. And a lot of it comes from like philosophical ideologies that people ascribe to, where it's like this is the natural order of things. But the internet isn't natural. A lot of things that we have done to extend the human lifespan aren't natural. And just by looking at the animal studies on aging, you can see how we can reverse aging. Well, it's been reversed multiple times in rodent models, so it's very easy. It can be done on demand. And now I think Dr. David Sinclair, the famous Harvard anti-aging researcher, I think he's finishing up his studies on primates and chimps, and doing the same tools that he figured out how to reverse aging in mice, doing it on primates because that's a step closer to humans, and then we'll do it on
mm.
humans. Although I feel like there are a lot of humans, like if I'm 90 years right now and I have a few $1 million in the bank, I'm not going to take that with me anywhere. Take that money and fund anti-aging, or if I'm 90, forget about how much money I have. If I'm 90 years old, what have I got to lose? I'll take any and all current aging protocols. I guess you do need money for that unless they're given to you for free to see the effects on a human being. So it's like I just feel like it's so short in our lives, and I don't think we should be complacent and accept that it's okay to be short. Like, no, especially if you've struggled. Like if you've had decades of struggle in your life and now you finally figured it out, you need more time to live life, to enjoy life. So let's buy back our time. You can see how passionate I get. So I need to calm down.
It's okay. I love it. I love passionate people. And, that is so true. I think we need that preach because the thing is that, so there is just a lot of misconception about health in general, like that at some point we are just supposed to get malfunctioning joints, and we're
Right.
just supposed to get back posture, and we're just supposed to get wrinkles. And we need to kind of go back a step and think like what drives that process. Is it aging, or is it, if it were biological years that adds up into your lives, everyone would get the same rate of wrinkles and joint pain and whatnot illnesses at the same time based on their biological years. But that's just not happen across any disorder or disease or aging process. We don't see a consistent pattern of this is exactly when it happens. So
Mm,
we can go into the mechanisms of aging and see like, okay, what did these people do, or what do we know about the human biology
yeah.
that are driving these unfortunate changes in our body. And maybe we're still so young in the science in general, not only with anti-aging, but just the rate that we can measure the human body and biological mechanisms. We cannot blame ourselves for aging because we just don't have the answers. But I think this kind of biocuriosity and aging curiosity is one of the biggest mindsets in health that you can grant yourself in order to keep healthy for the rest of your life.
Yeah, because what is the biggest risk factor for every disease that you can think of? It's aging. This is why almost everything that people struggle with it. If you look at autoimmune disease rates, they really start happening usually at a later age. If you look at heart attacks and strokes, they usually start happening at a later age. Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. It's like you are shocked if you hear that somebody's they're 18, 19 and they get Alzheimer's. You know, like we already intuitively know this. And so aging is the biggest risk factor for all diseases, you know? We just
Yeah,
target the root cause, everything else falls into place. Cancer, same
right.
thing.
I recently did an interview with Dr. Matt Caberlain, who is the number one researcher in this field. Technically, he has written over 300 peer-reviewed, extremely rigorous scientific articles on aging and the biology of aging.
What's
And
his
he
name
told
again?
Matt Caberlain,
Okay.
he's the CEO of OptiSpan, and he's involved in like many anti-aging organizations. He also have a dog aging projects where they're trying to extend the lifespans of companion animals. And
I love that. Oh
yeah,
my
me
God,
too.
your pets. I just lost
I
my dog too. Yeah.
you,
It's
you lost your dog.
yeah, in March.
I'm,
Yeah,
I'm
I
so
lost my
sorry to
dog in
hear
March
that's
and I
horrible.
lost yeah, I know. Oh, it was horrible. And then I lost my grandma like 6 weeks afterwards. So it's like ugh. And I had never lost
Oh,
anybody close to me in my entire life. You know, for 37 years, though I don't know what it is to lose somebody. And yeah, it was not easy. I still cry. I'll start
yeah,
crying
I'm
now, so
sure.
let's change the subject.
Okay, I'm so
Yeah,
sorry to hear
it's okay.
that. So in aging, he believes that aging is an autoimmune disease. So that's like
Mm,
our body reacting to the inflammation caused by these hallmarks of aging that are, we have, I think, 12 of them. So for example,
yes.
gut dysbiosis. What
Senescent
else is
cells,
there?
zombie
Yeah,
cells.
chronic inflammation. So we have those
Yes.
things and our
Less the
immune
cell
system is
membrane
reacting.
becomes more inflexible, the cellular membrane. So, yeah.
Mm. So he believes that aging is actually an autoimmune disorder driven by our body's immune system chronically reacting to the hallmarks of aging. So if we can target the hallmarks of aging, we are technically could be able to reverse aging.
Nice.
And I don't know if
Yeah.
his theory went this far. You can listen from the interview, but at least like that's the theory that the aging is an autoimmune disease.
I love that. And that makes total sense to me.
Hmm.
Everything I know about all the different diseases, it seems like everything is autoimmune. And it would make sense that if you have all this inflammation in the body and just you naturally start having even more leaky gut as you get older, naturally, in quotations, yeah, of course you would have autoimmunity. That's
That's why, yeah. That's why I think it's always so important to go back into inflammation
yeah.
and just making sure that our brain is not inflamed, our gut is not inflamed, at least chronically. Of course, we all know that there can be adaptive inflammation, which is the hormesis. So, hormetic stress can cause short-term acute inflammation, ramping up our immune system and causing repair,
Yeah.
cellular repair processes. One of the biggest thing that I have biggest benefit of this mechanism is skin healing that I've seen. So I've used microneedling to
Hmm.
cause micro damage, basically this controlled damage to my own skin, and I repaired my acne scars with that. So my skin grew back.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. You have a YouTube video talking about microdermabrasion, and I started watching it, and I didn't have time to finish it, so I added it to my skin playlist. And so I saw though a good piece of it where you see just massive, crazy improvements in the scars just because you did the dermabrasion, derma rolling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
If you look at those pictures, you wouldn't think that that's my skin.
Insanity. How long did you do
Yeah.
that for? And every day, and how many years or how many months?
I did maybe about 1 year when I saw the biggest improvements, but it was only once a week.
Oh,
And yeah, so, but I've done also, I eat, well, it's all in the video, like the collagen that I eat and the serums that I use, but I still keep derma rolling. There is this amazing woman in Instagram that I follow called Jin Amber. She has a derma rolling brand. She has a lot of before after pictures and she discusses about like how to reverse skin aging. She's like skin anti-aging queen. So a shout
nice.
out to her because I used her needles. her
Gotcha.
microneedles because I know that they are high quality and they are real needles, so they won't damage your skin. And
Okay.
those healed my skin. So that was just to show the example of like acute damage to a tissue can be a good thing, but you need to be able to lower the inflammation to
Yes.
be able to initiate those repair processes that can
Mm,
help the body to heal and become better.
yes.
Then if it's a chronic inflammation, like in terms of the acne skin, it just started aging.
What other good things you've noted or good skin treatments you can share with us? Because I've struggled with acne too, and I still have acne scars. So I would be very interested in learning more about that. And of course, wrinkles and all that kind of stuff.
For the wrinkles as well. Well, you've seen the video, probably the before after of my eye like area,
Yes.
because my skin was very aged because of all of the harsh chemicals that I had to put to my face and the Accutane, which is
Mm,
horror. And that really thinned my skin a lot. So I think microneedling is actually one of the best things ever you can do to your skin. That
microneedling.
I
So you would say that the derma roller that you got, that's doing microneedling, basically. That's how you do microneedling.
Yeah, it's like a synonymous. It's
Gotcha.
microneedling, dermarolling. There
Yes.
are also stamps, so it's just like a plate, and you just stamp your face.
Yeah.
I've tried that one as well. It has been a good one. And then there is Derma Pen that you can use. This kind of like more electric, but I like the microneedling. It's simple, it's easy. The roller is just easy to roam around the face, but
Okay.
you need to be just making sure that you are hygienic because it is micro damage. So it is little wounds to the face.
Okay.
0.5 millimeter is the best length, I think the safest to sort of try at home.
Mm.
I had tried 0.75, but I only used it for the deep scars. And as soon as those started healing, I just moved to 0.5 millimeters and I've continued with that one and it's still improving. I swear by it. The other thing that I tried is CO2 fractional laser.
Okay.
Um, Not a big fan. It the downtime was 4 months. I wasn't able to travel. I had to like protect from the sun, and my skin literally peeled, like peeled out.
Ooh.
It's very invasive, or it's not invasive, but it's very harsh treatment.
Yes.
I wouldn't recommend that. I didn't see even, compared to microneedling, I think it was very minimally more
Beneficial.
beneficial.
Mhm.
And especially if you do microneedling, if you take it as, as an exercise that you just decide, I'm going to start and I'm going to continue because you can do it for the rest of your life,
Yeah.
then it's way better than doing something like very harsh
Right.
ones.
And then you have to go to a dermatologist's office, all that kind of stuff. Whereas with the derma rolling, you can do it in your own house whenever you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Have you ever tried chemical peels like Cosmelan and things like that?
I tried once chemical peel. It didn't do anything to my skin except it caused me like burn
Right.
sensation. I didn't like it. I've tried almost everything.
Right.
And the only thing that I really, really love is microneedling.
Gotcha. Perfect. Okay. I feel like I'm gonna divide this into like two parts, part one, part two, so it's not too long with every
Yeah.
interview, because people will have a heart attack if they're like, oh my God, do I really want to go for 2 hours on this thing? I think once they watch part one, they'll be hooked though. They'll want to do part two. So let's do the TEDx, right? How did you get to speak at TEDx? Some advice for people who would be interested in that.
Right. So I wish I would have like a very good advice for this, but it was my university was organizing TEDx events yearly, and I had an interesting story. So I think I met one of the organizers. I got like he was maybe my supervisor, a tutor or something, and I think I asked about it. We just got into the conversation, and he told something like through it like, oh, you should apply. And I was like,
Mm.
well, I don't know what to talk about, or I guess I could talk about the meditation stuff and how that healed my pain. And he was like, there you go, you can just apply. And I'm like, why not? And I just thought like this is a chance that I can challenge myself to something that I'm afraid of, just go for it. So I applied and they were interested and then they invited me.
I'm writing it as a reminder to look into applying. I think I should do that too. I think, yeah, you're right. It shouldn't be that, especially in the position that you and I are in, we have so much to offer. I should probably just apply for
I
a
think
TED.
everyone has so much to offer. Like everyone has a story. The whole premise of the event is stories worth sharing.
Right.
So, or ideas worth sharing. And, it's not about having to have a PhD. There are a lot of people who, well, you have PhD too, but there are a
Yeah.
lot of people who come there to inspire and just share their
Yeah.
story. And
Yeah.
that can really help someone who is struggling with the same things. I have another friend as well who applied in another country and they got in speaking as well. So it's just a normal
Yeah.
application process. If you find an event
And
and they have an application process, you just apply.
did you notice a major shift? Did you have an online brand then? So I can see kind of like, does that convert into building your brand? Or I guess it's always good to say that you're a TEDx speaker,
Yeah,
even
you
if
know
you
what? I
have,
didn't
yeah.
have an online brand back then. So I was
Mm,
still a student and I was teaching yoga as a side
nice.
job. So that was my brand. So that didn't really convert into anything.
Right.
But nowadays, when I do work with people like branding consulting or something, they always say to put the TEDx speaker for added value. For
Yes.
me, I never used it before because actually it was quite unfortunate. So they had somehow um, misconnected the microphone and no one's talk was recorded. Only the video, not the sound.
Oh,
And they were not able to recover the sound. So they got never published.
oh,
So
wow.
it's more
Yeah.
accurately
Yeah.
unpublished TEDx
Right,
speaker,
right,
but
right.
I still did it. But yeah,
You can do another one now. So you've already done it. You probably already know the people who organize it. You can do it again. And so that it goes on your YouTube and maybe updated with all the things that you learned even more. You have even more to offer now. But
yeah.
yeah, oh well, it's fine. At least, you went through that process and you gave the talk. You have the video proof for it. So that's good.
Yeah, they didn't give the video either.
They didn't give you the
So,
video? Oh, wow.
but I have pictures. So
Okay, that's
that's
good.
something.
Give me something.
I have pictures with a big TEDx sign on the
Oh,
background. So
wow. That's good.
that's
That's
that.
good.
No,
That's
I
like,
think it was
yeah.
so much about the experience. And to be honest, there is a live audience there.
Yeah.
So many people came to talk to me after the talk. And
Oh,
for me, someone who is first time there sharing my story, I never publicly spoke about my story, about the things that helped me.
yeah.
Um, so I was able to help people
Yeah.
there on that spot, and that's all that matters,
Were you
honestly. At this,
were you nervous?
of course, yeah.
Did you rehearse it? That's the thing. I feel like if I do it, if I apply to get and I get accepted, I probably rehearse it like 30 times. Because
You
there's too
must
many people
because
in the
in
audience.
in
Yeah.
TEDx you must provide them the script word by word.
Okay.
So you must learn it
You must
word by
learn.
word. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that kind of forces you anyway to rehearse it. I remember when
Yeah.
I defended my dissertation, one of my friends, she had already graduated a few years before me. We were like, we're in the same doctoral program, and she told me when she defended her dissertation, she rehearsed it every day for 7 days in a row. I was like, okay, so that's kind of like a good starting point, but I wanted to make sure I was so done. I just wanted to graduate and so I can focus on the business. So I rehearsed it 27 times. But
Wow.
then when I was there, it was like, whew, like water, and you don't have to worry because you're being judged by multiple professors and they're going to grill you and quiz you. So you want to be as confident as possible so you can focus on what they're asking you. So I don't think I needed to rehearse it 27 times, but I did. So I feel like I would probably over rehearse too if I do the TEDx talk. I haven't spoken publicly, taught. I mean, I've been teaching online, sure, but the last time I like taught publicly in an auditorium setting, it was at the University of Miami, which was like around maybe 2016 or 2017. I remember they put up tons of students, so like they combined multiple classes, and I was teaching in an auditorium setting. So it's all practice really, and when you do that, you realize whether there's 100 students or whether there's 5 students. If you know your material, you know your material, and you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. So, okay, I think this is good. We touched upon so many different things, and I love how many similar. I didn't struggle as much as I cannot imagine, the headaches for so long, but I feel like we have very similar struggles that kind of helped us become kind of nerds. And when I say nerd, it's like a good way, smart, intelligent, curious people. And so this is why I feel like we vibe so well. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Where can people find you so that they can connect with you, work with you, follow you, all this stuff?
Thank you so much for inviting me. And first of all, I love what you do, sharing to the world and helping the world. And so people can find me in YouTube. I have a channel in Inka Land. I think the handle is I am Inka Land. Inka Land was taken, so I put I am Inka Land everywhere. So it's Instagram's I am Inka Land. In YouTube, if you search Inka Land podcast, you'll find it. And of course, my webpage, inkaland.co. And there I have a free supplement guide if anyone wants. It's for mind and brain health. So you can DM me in either channel or with my email. You can DM me the word guide or supplements or just like, hey, Inka, I want the guide, and I'll send it to you.
Perfect. And I'll make sure I link your website and Instagram and YouTube in the description box below so people can find you easily. And thank you, everybody, for sticking with us till the end. I hope you're enjoying this kind of content. If you did, make sure you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that little notification bell icon so YouTube alerts you every time I post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.